Welcome to the Big Weekend Review Show, and I always begin with John Ellis when we are lucky. He is the founder, editor-in-chief of News Items, your daily compendium of real news, and it's becoming increasingly difficult to separate the fake and the false and the disinformation online. John, just aside from the 6 items you sent me, have you noticed that it's almost impossible to go through the posts and figure out what's real and what's not real during a war?
Uh, it's difficult. The fog of war is a true thing, and it's probably foggier than it's ever been.
I think there are lots of people who are eager to peddle narratives, and we're just very afraid of that. However, I want to reverse order of what you sent me and begin with Robin Wright because she's the opposite of fake news. She's been doing this as long as I've been doing this, and she is writing in the New Yorker this week about the Iranian home front. How would you summarize her report from Tehran and regions nearby?
Well, just the failure of the regime to adequately, service its population. The stunning statistic is that when she first started reporting on Iran, the rial was 70 to 100 on the dollar. So 70, if you had $100, you'd get 70 rial, and now it's 1.7 rial to one. So, the collapse of the currency, the difficulty, the electricity is intermittent. Well, water is intermittent. It's just one disaster after another. And one imagines that the people of Tehran and the people of Iran more generally can hardly wait to get rid of the theocracy and the security state underneath it.
John, I understood the real to be 1.7 million to $1.
To one. Yeah, that's
okay,
right.
okay.
1.7
I just wanted to make
yeah.
1.7 million. That's remarkable. That meant no wonder the Bazaris went out on strike in December. Their life savings are gone.
Yeah, it's wallpaper. I mean, it's not a currency; it's wallpaper. So obviously, there's a huge underground cash market. But how do you how do you come to the cash market with 1.7 real and get $1 back? It's a disaster, and it's emblematic of everything else that's wrong with the society and the economy underneath the society.
Now, we can't really point in California to power outages because that's not an infrequent occurrence here on the West Coast. But we don't have yet water supply, potable water shortages, and that was 6B in your notes to me. Their water systems are completely broken, and if anyone blows up their dams, we're not going to do that. America and Israel are not going to blow up their dams. But if we did, they're done. They don't have any water.
Yeah, I mean, the thing that people sort of don't realize about the Middle East is that it's obviously rich in hydrocarbons, but it's desperately short of water. And so Riyadh, the UAE, Kuwait depend on desalination plants for drinking water. So if, for instance, the Iranians decided to do a drone swarm and hit the desalination plant near Riyadh, then Riyadh would have to be, everyone would have to leave Riyadh because there would be no water. Same is true in Tehran. If you blow up the 2 major dam systems, there'd be a huge flood, obviously, and then there would be no drinking water in Tehran. So you have, in this weird way, we don't think that the Iranians are going to blow up the desalination plants, and we don't think the U.S. and Israel are going to blow up the dams. But if one or the other does, then the war spirals out of control.
This is not on your list of news item stories. And John's news items is available. Just Google news items and John Ellis and sign up for it. Yesterday's Wall Street Journal story on the UAE being a financial hub, they've taken about 250 attacks, and they have not yet cut off the shadow Iranian banking system that is in Dubai. How long do they put up with that, John?
Apparently forever. we'll deal with anyone seems to be the modus operandi. And at some point, one would think that the U.S. would say knock it off, but so far, no.
All right, but that's the strangest thing I've learned. Let's move to your second story. It's the David Axelrod theory that you nominate for president whomever is the opposite in personality of whoever is the incumbent. Now, you point out it'll probably be a son of Trump, and not really a son of Trump, but J.D. Vance or another MAGA anointed candidate, and the Democrats will have to look for the opposite of that. But if you look at their front runners, they're not really the opposite. Gavin isn't, AOC isn't, Rahm Emanuel might be, Josh Shapiro might be, but their front runners aren't that way, John.
Well, if you look at the candidates, you'll say Gavin Newsom is better than Pete Buttigieg, and Pete Buttigieg is better than Elizabeth Warren or whatever. If you look at what the Democratic primary electorate wants, in 2020, they wanted someone who could beat Trump by 63 to 37%. And so they passed on Bernie Sanders, they passed on Elizabeth Warren, and they chose Biden, whom they didn't particularly care about because they thought he had the best chance to beat Trump. I think it's likely that the same dynamic will take place or occur in 2027, where after 3.5 years of Trump, Democrats will say, primary electorate will say, look, we don't need somebody who agrees with us on every issue. We just need somebody who can get these guys out. And so that opens up, I think, a real opportunity for somebody like Rahm Emanuel. If you read the political press, you think it's all about Gavin and this, that, and the other thing. But really, it's the candidate who has the best chance of defeating Trump or son of Trump that is going to be the nominee, in my view.
And I agree with you, by the way. Rahm Emanuel is formidable because he is the closest thing to Clinton. I mean, he was deputy chief of staff for something like that in the Clinton White House, and then chief of staff for Obama. He's very much in line with sort of center-left Democrats, and he's a formidable candidate. I've had him on the program. We'll see. Now let's talk about the AfD and German elections on Sunday. Germany's divided, like the United States, into states. We've got a couple of elections coming up in Germany this weekend. Tell us about them.
Well, there are 5 state elections this year, 3 in the eastern, what used to be East Germany, where the AfD, the base, if you will, of the AfD, and for simplicity's sake, we'll call the AfD the populist MAGA-like party. It's often referred to in the press as the hard right party, and that's not inaccurate. The key thing that we're looking at is whether the AfD can extend its reach, if you will, into West German states. And the one that's coming up on Sunday is Baden-Württemberg, which is the home to Mercedes-Benz and Porsche. And it is expected, based on the polling, that the AfD will double its support from the last time. That is an indication of the party's growing strength, and it is also, I think, the sort of last straw in preventing the AfD from participating in the federal government.
If it wins, then would you in the state election, would you expect Merz to invite them into the general government?
It's unclear, because the federal elections are off a ways, right? But I think the opportunity, the ability of the German business political establishment to keep the AfD out of government diminishes with each election that the AfD does well in. They're likely to finish third, maybe even second in this election, but they will have doubled their support. It seems all but certain they will have doubled their support. And, you can't keep people out of government if they keep doing very well in elections.
No, not if they mean a majority. Less than a minute, John. I don't get optimistic about Cuba because I've been optimistic about Cuba before. Are you an optimist about Cuba now?
I don't think Cuba has any choice but to make some sort of deal with the United States. Otherwise, I think, I mean, they can barely keep the power on. It's a, it's a country in full collapse, and the only way out is to cut a deal with the United States, invite investment, etc. So I think I'm pretty optimistic about Cuba.
That would be remarkable. John Ellis of News Item, always good to talk to you. Follow John at Ellis Items on X. News Items, Google it. News Items, John Ellis. Subscribe. You'll be smart every morning by 7 a.m. East Coast time. Hope you're watching us on the Salem News Channel, now available on Samsung TV at channel 1177 on Pluto TV, and now Amazon Prime. Just go to the news menu, drop down, find Salem News Channel, or listen to us in the radio on the Salem Radio Network, or, of course, any of our wonderful affiliates. I'm joined by Eli Lake. He is, of course, of the Free Press, the host of Breaking History, and an expert on Iran. Eli, we're coming to the end of the first week of the war. How do you think it's going?
I think it's going really well. I think we shouldn't get too comfortable, but right now it's hard to say who's in charge. I think their command and control is severely degraded. And then if you just look at the response, the Iranians have attacked everybody from Azerbaijan to Qatar. And so they've turned fence sitters who were their neighbors into adversaries. And then their two powerful patrons, Russia and China, have not really done much of anything to help them. They are alone, leaderless, and the strategy, which I think, some of the more pessimistic people in the West would talk about, is that they want to try to extend it out and continue to sort of drain American resources. They may have hit some of our air defense and missile defense radar systems. That would be a problem. But right now, according to what we're hearing from General Kane and Admiral Cooper, the United States has taken out most of their ability. I mean, the rate of fire from their missiles has decreased. We're probably going to see more of their drones, but it's going extremely well, I would say.
They have adopted what I've been calling, and you're old enough to remember this, maybe, the Yosemite Sam strategy.
Yes, I remember. I know. Right.
You know who Yosemite Sam is. He would fire off
course.
in every different direction. So they've done that. To what end do you think they did that?
Well, I think that I think it was kind of a panic move. I mean, I don't know. I mean, at this point, we have to. It's just think about this. I was briefing some very senior Israeli military folks, and what they told me was they couldn't believe they would have the ability to target mobile missile launchers the way that the U.S. and Israel has in this war so effectively, even a few years ago. I mean, think about how hard a problem that is in a country as large as Iran. Some of that is because Israel has the entire country wired, but some of it is just because of our technology and our ability to do the kind of instant, big data sorting with AI and pinpoint these targets. But that was seen as a kind of, impossible problem that with the amount of missiles that they had. And yet, here we are. And unlike the 12-day war, I think we can safely say at this point that Iran's sort of defense industrial complex, its ability to eventually kind of renew its military at this point is finished. So
Trump gave them the three strikes option. Soleimani was strike
Right.
number one. The Midnight Hammer was strike number two. Now he's gone to unconditional surrender. Dwayne made this for me. A picture of the famous U.S. Grant picture with Donald Trump's face overposed. When Fort Donelson, he said unconditional surrender. What does that even mean, Eli?
I think it means that whoever's left in the leadership of Iran will, crawl on their knees 100 yards till they, I mean, this goes back to the history of warfare. This is basically, you guys were saying death to America for nearly 50 years. So now what I want is for you to, acknowledge that you lost and you've been defeated. I think he's speaking a language that the Iranians absolutely understand at this point.
Do they get to keep their small arms and their mules like Grant
Right.
allowed Lee's troops to do? I mean, they got to run a country. And we're not going to disband the army again, right? The Artesh, we're not going to do that again. We did that once in Iraq, and it was the wrong move.
No, especially I think that there's more likelihood that you would see the National Army, which was, by the way, created by Reza Pahlavi's grandfather. That was something from the Shah. That I think is an institution that can stay, and I think that there is a chance you'll see probably, I hope, leadership defections from there. I would say the Revolutionary Guard Corps that was created by Ayatollah
Got to go.
Khomeini, that's got to go. And then, what's interesting is that they've been very strategic this time. I think that Trump learned a lesson from early January when he told Iranians to go into the streets. They're saying, don't do it. There's a war going on. Bombs are dropping. And it's almost as if we're sort of saying we're going to give the order. The other thing to keep in mind is that we saw developments is that it appears that there's an understanding now with Iranian Kurds, there are 10 million of them, and the U.S. government that there will be air cover. If they want to begin fighting the remnants of the regime in the second phase of this, I wouldn't be surprised if you saw that with other ethnic groups. I think it's very important for these groups to come out and make very clear that they are not interested in creating sort of separatist little statelets.
Oh, I'm glad to hear
I've
you
talked
say
to
it.
the I've
Ben
talked
and
to the
Ben
Kurds,
Talabou
and
yesterday said that would be a nightmare if
yeah,
the various ethnicities all said they want the statelet.
no, and I don't think it's going to happen. And I think that there's an opportunity here for some competent diplomacy to make sure that doesn't happen. But and then we'll have to see. I have been critical of elements of Reza Pahlavi, but I do think that he does represent something, especially now that we're getting the unconditional surrender, that he could be this option for a transitional leader who has enough recognition, and he needs to build support among more Iranians inside the country, though he has some of it. And then I think he has said so many times over the years he's not interested in becoming another Shah. So he would be somebody who I think you could trust to transition Iran to democracy. But we're not there yet. We're still in the war. But it's telling that only 6 days into it, we're talking about these things right now because I think they're pressing questions.
What's very telling to me is that the journal story today that UAE continues to allow the Iranian shadow banking to continue. Uh, I mean, who does that? Who allows someone who is
I thought
firing
that
at their
story was like
country?
a signal that they might be ending that practice. I thought that was
Okay.
a sign that this was going to be coming to an end soon. I think certainly, I mean, listen, what's become clear, and not just because of the Iranian response, when we were getting the signals like in February and late January, the Gulf states are really interested in these negotiations. That was all a ruse. They wanted to publicly say that they weren't supporting the war, but they want the regime to go as badly as I think Israel does at this point.
Is it also a signal, come get your money and you can have a condo here?
Yes, I think, by the way, that's smart, as much as it in some ways is unfair. Lots of bad people in that scenario.
Machiavellian. Yeah.
Yeah, it's Machiavellian, right? But if you say, all right, and it's what Kareem Sajabor says, and I think he's right. 80% are corrupt, 20% are true believers. So if you can get the 80% of the corrupt to just not show up to work and take the deal, then I think we have an opportunity to do something truly historic. And what I don't quite understand at this point is there is it almost feels like Trump's political opposition has determined that this is going to be a catastrophe and a fiasco without giving it a chance. And I think they're going to lose a lot of credibility if it goes the way I certainly hope it does.
They're not fighting the last war, they're fighting the last campaign. And boy, is that a mistake.
Yep.
Eli Lake from the Free Press. Follow him on X at Eli Lake. Read him. He's publishing a lot in the Free Press. You ought to be a subscriber. Thank you, Eli. Matt Continetti is, of course, Senior Fellow in Domestic Studies at the American Enterprise Institute. He's also the Free Expressions columnist at the Wall Street Journal. In today's column, he writes that the through line of Donald Trump's foreign policy for 40 years has been Iran. Matt, it got a new iteration today to unconditional surrender. Dwayne did this picture for me because I can't work ChatGPT on the images. But the original unconditional surrender man was Grant, and he said it to Fort Donelson, and he just meant walk out and lay everything down. What do you think Trump means by unconditional surrender?
Well, Hugh, I think he can mean a few things. The first is that he's going to eliminate Iran's capacity to sow mayhem around the region, so decimate the Iranian war machine. They're also going after Iran's apparatus of repression, the institutions like the IRGC and the Basij militia that slaughtered the 30,000 Iranians during the recent protests. So unconditional surrender would mean a fundamental change in the Iranian government. Either a new form of government, a new leader emerges that says that they are going to act according to Trump's will, that sort of regime coercion that we saw in Venezuela, or a popular uprising. The Iranian people take to the streets once again at the conclusion of this military campaign, and they lay the groundwork for a new post-Mullah, post-Ayatollah Iran.
Are Americans overconfident at this point? Because one missile at Dimona, one attack on a desal in Saudi Arabia, one mass casualty event, and Americans will be very unhappy.
Well, it's hard to know who exactly they'd be unhappy at. I think they'd be unhappy at Iran if Iran was to unleash mass terrorism or asymmetric warfare in response to this conflict. But you're right to suggest that the war is not over. And of course, we don't know what lies ahead. But we do know this, Hugh. I mean, the military effort by our sailors, pilots, soldiers has been absolutely incredible. And the fact that we've seen this rapid decline in Iran's capacity to fire missiles at Israel, at the 11 other countries it's fired missiles at since the beginning of operations last week, is a testament, I think, to the effectiveness of the military campaign so far. And once you've really defanged Iran's ability to shoot these ballistic missiles at its neighbors and at our forces, then you can move on to the regime targets. And I think we saw that in the IDF strike earlier today on the governance compound underground. And then it's just a matter of time as you continue to layer on the military pressure, first against their ability to strike back, then against the broader institutions that support the Iranian regime. And we'll just see what happens when the Iranians no longer can control their military response or their own actual governance in this very large country.
Now, it's not a stupid country, and so what I'm calling their Yosemite Sam strategy, based upon the Warner Brothers cartoon character who would walk into the saloon and fire in every direction. What do you think was behind that? They're not stupid. What did they think they were going to get from Yosemite Samming it?
Well, a couple things. I mean, I think they clearly wanted to test whether they could break off some of the Gulf states from the American alliance and show that Iranian military capabilities were such that the Gulf states should pressure the United States to end the campaign and to also rein in Israel. That has not succeeded. And in fact, the Iran Yosemite Sam strategy has actually created a coalition of the willing against Iran. All of the countries that it has been striking with missiles or drones are now joining to various levels the U.S.-Israeli campaign against Iran. But I think the Iranians were also aiming for economic war, and we are seeing that. We are seeing the price of oil increase. We are seeing the stock market take a hit because of fears of potential energy crunch, not so much in the United States, thanks to Donald Trump's energy policies over the past decade, but in Europe and certainly in the Pacific. So I think
$90 a barrel. That's where
Right.
we are. $90 a barrel today is considerably higher than 60, and so I assume the pump price will go up by a third, don't you?
Yeah, it's already increasing here. But again, I think really the people who will bear the brunt of it aren't necessarily in the United States, but they're in the Pacific Rim, they're in Europe. So they're going to the Iranians hope exert some pressure on Trump. But what we've seen so far is Trump is not not succumbing to this pressure. He wants the campaign to succeed. He wants victory.
This morning I was up early for Fox and Friends and asked about the Wayne Mullin choice. My assessment is that Donald Trump is a ruthless patriot, meaning he's in a war now and he really cannot afford a sideshow that Kristi Noem had become, and he's going to be ruthless about taking out people who are detracting from the war effort. Will that continue, do you think? Because he's generally been very reluctant to exile people.
That's true, and the Noem to Mullin switch would be the first major switch in this cabinet, which is, considering the record in the first term, quite incredible. I think, it's a great question, Hugh. I was recently reading some of our friend Victor Davis Hanson's work on war, and he said, a war president needs to be ruthless about the types of leaders that he hires to prosecute a war. And he talked about Lincoln and the generals. And we saw with George W. Bush in the Iraq War, it wasn't until he made that change to David Petraeus and that shift in strategy with the surge in Iraq that the situation in Iraq began to turn around after several years of insurgency. So I would hope that President Trump would follow in the footsteps of great war leaders and say, look, if you're not implementing the plan, if you're not furthering the cause of victory, then we're going to have to find somebody else. And it was clear on the home front that Secretary Noem had become a distraction and even a political liability, and that we needed a shift in our tactics on mass deportations away from these very dramatic raids in blue cities to a more focused approach that's been advocated by Tom Homan. So I think this was the correct move by Trump, and I don't anticipate that Mullin will have any difficulty getting confirmed.
Are Democrats in danger if they slow down Mullin? Because we got sleepers in the United States. The Hezbollah roundup in New Jersey last year was for real. If there's an attack and we haven't got a DHS secretary because the Democrats are screwing around, or Rand Paul even as chairman, do they pay a price?
Well, they should. I'm struck as I'm watching this politically from the Iran war. The Republicans are unified. There are some lone dissenters, but for more or less, the polls show, and it's reflected in the Congress, Republicans are unified behind Trump. The Democrats, I think, are unserious. It's not only that they're continuing to block funding for the Department of Homeland Security at a time of war, but that they're also voting, on the one hand, against Trump's powers as commander-in-chief, and on the other, they're admitting that Iran is the world's largest sponsor of terrorism. Well, if you think that Iran, if you correctly, is the world's largest sponsor of terrorism, why would you limit the U.S. commander-in-chief's ability to punish Iran, to, in fact, change the behavior of Iran, to end the threat from Iran, as he's doing right now? Meanwhile, you have Gavin Newsom saying Israel's an apartheid state, declaring war on Israel rhetorically at a time when we're fighting Iran.
It is the descent of Democratic Party rhetoric into incoherence. I've been using my Goldilocks strategy, but the argument is premised on 1991 was too little. We shouldn't have quit after 100 hours. We should have gone after Saddam. We had to go back. The too big is 2003. We went, we stayed. In fact, we're still there. I want a just right strategy in Iran, but I don't know how to articulate it. What do you think about a Goldilocks strategy? What's it look like in the end, in 5 years?
Well, in 5 years, we want an Iran that's not a threat to its neighbors and our allies in the Middle East. It's not a threat to Europe or ultimately to the United States because of its missile program. That's not fomenting terrorism around the world and is not repressing its own people. That's the goal. And I think those are achievable goals if you apply the correct means. You're right, in 1991, we didn't go far enough. We left a weakened Saddam in place, and we had a decade where we were trying to contain Saddam, ultimately unsuccessfully, and that required Operation Iraqi Freedom in 2003. A thing I'd like to talk about with the Iraq War, though, the initial Iraq War was a stunning success. Saddam fell within 6 weeks. The regime ended within 6 weeks. When people criticize the forever war in Iraq, it's not the original operation. It's the years we spent combating the insurgency. And there I would say the reason we failed to combat the insurgency effectively for years was we didn't go big enough. That in fact we didn't have the number of troops that were necessary. In fact, we had been denied by Turkey to have an army come.
I'm so glad you said it. I was going to bring up the fact that the northern offensive was shut off at the last minute by the Turks, our not so great allies who are doing it again.
All right. I mean, it's always important to remember. Look, I don't think we need a huge ground force right now in Iran. I don't think we're going to need it. That's not what's happening here. But what I'm saying is we need to understand how we get to the desired political end state. And for Iran, what that means is first denying the capability of the regime to retaliate, then to destroy from the air all of the institutions of repression that have kept the Iranian people down, and then third, doing what's necessary to allow the Iranian people, to encourage them, to give them the means to rise up and take their country back from the mullahs. And on that third point, I just want to say our expert here at AEI, Fred Kagan, has passionately made the case that we need to be providing communications to the Iranian people, that the mullahs continue to suppress internet activity in Iran. And so we need to do everything we can to provide Starlink, to somehow restore avenues of communication so that the Iranian people can communicate with each other and amplify the networks of dissent that will be necessary for them when the time comes to go to the streets and take back their country.
You know, Fred Kagan did a Aaron McLean School of War podcast earlier this week, which was truly a lesson in perspective on this, and I would recommend it to everyone. I want to close with grand strategy, Matt. What do you think the Chinese are thinking and seeing right now? Do they think and see we're running low on munitions, or do they think and see, holy smokes, the Israeli-American alliance is a few iterations ahead of us on tech?
Well, I think the first thing they're seeing is that there is only one country in the world that can do what America is doing right now in Iran. There's only one country in the world, Hugh, that could project this amount of power on the other side of the planet in accordance or in cooperation with this ally Israel, this small, tiny country that has one of the most capable air forces in the world. As Admiral Cooper stated, the two most powerful air forces in the world combining forces against the regime in Iran. China is noticing that, and I think recognizing that it still has a ways to go before it can knock the United States out of the number one position. But I also think it is looking at the new way of warfare, missiles, AI, interceptors, munitions, and willpower. And so as we look ahead to future conflicts, rather we look ahead to deter future conflicts, we have to get serious about amassing the deterrent power that we will require to prevent any Chinese invasion of Taiwan. And that means that not only are we going to need a supplemental for this war in Iran, we're going to need to go and truly restock and commit, I almost think, to an emergency crash program to get our munitions up to snuff, where
I'm with you. I think we should do a second reconciliation. Enemies. They could do a reconciliation with a pure majority in 6 weeks if they got the Budget Committee, Armed Services, and Appropriations in both houses to say only defense, only munitions, and here's a trust fund of $1 trillion, build missiles, and maybe submarines. I don't think the Chinese missed the submarine sinking off of Sri Lanka. We don't need a lot of submarines in this war. I think they're all in the South China Sea. I don't know anything, of course, but that was pretty an impressive display.
Yeah, it was. And, some of those vessels are intelligence vessels for Iran. So that also denied the Iranians a capability. They've tried to slink away to Sri Lanka. It didn't work. We can find them. So the Chinese noticed that. There's no question. And again, I think that's important for us at home to recognize the kind of awesome power of the United States here and working with Israel to end a threat that has been dogging America for 50 years. So China, I think, will look at this and say it has a ways to go. And it also has plenty of...
1 minute, Matt. Which Democrat has been helped the most by the last week? A Democrat who's been helped.
A Democrat who's been helped the most this week? I think it's John Fetterman, to be honest with you. I think Fetterman
Okay.
is showing the way.
How about one running for president?
I mean, Hugh, I'd be interested to see. I don't think any of them have acted responsibly. I mean, yeah, we mentioned Newsom calling our ally an apartheid state in the middle of this operation. We have Kamala Harris, who endorsed Jasmine Crockett in the Texas Democratic primary only to see her lose. I think Josh Shapiro may have been helped. He's kind of ducked out of this.
And Rahm Emanuel.
I know who you're thinking. You're thinking our buddy Rahm Emanuel.
Yep.
And the thing about Rahm is he is a font of good ideas and common sense, and there's no way the Democratic Party is going to nominate him. That's why it took me so long to get to him, Hugh.
John Ellis just said they'll nominate anyone who can beat the son of Trump, not literally, but just anybody. And the person I'm thinking is most formidable, Rahm Emanuel. Hey, Matt, always great to see you. Follow him at X at Continetti. Listen to him on the Wall Street Journal Expressions page, or read him rather. President Trump just posted that he's had the defense contractors into the White House today. They're going to quadruple production. He wants $500 billion more above the $900 billion that he's already got in the defense budget. Good on him. We cannot have enough of the missiles in the age of missiles and submarines and ships. We're proving that. You can't save enough on your cell phone bill. Really, if you can get it for free, wouldn't you do it? Well, you can't get it for free, but you don't have to overpay for it. You can have Consumer Cellular. 1-800-411-4454. 1-800-411-4454. 1-800-411-4454. Or go to consumercellular.com/Hugh. Now, a couple things to remember. My promo code is Hugh, H-U-G-H. That should get you $5 off each month, no matter what plan you pick for the first 5 months. It's worth $25. Sometimes they say my promo code is Hugh25. Sometimes they say it's Hugh. Hey, use them both. Say it might be Hugh, it might be Hugh25, but I get $5 off a month for the first 5 months. Now, if you're over 50, here's what my listeners have loved if they're over 50. 2 lines, unlimited data, $60 a month. That's only $30 per line, unlimited data. Easy way to manage your cost of living for a limited time only. Call 1-800-411-4454. Get that second month free by using the promo code Hugh, or visit consumercellular.com/Hugh. I guess it's the second month for free. They're always changing the fine print on me, but use my code and you'll get whatever the promo is. 1-800-411-4454. I'm in the Relief Factor studio, feeling good. I did not go up the Implacable Hill today because I was on Fox and Friends at 3:20 in the morning California time. I go back to D.C. on Saturday of next week after stopping at Colorado Christian College on Friday to see my old friend Eric Hogue and my kids. I taught there 10 years ago for a semester and love it in Lakewood, so I'll be there next week. But I didn't go up the Implacable Hill this morning because when you do the 320 hit, and I love the 320 hit, love talking to Ainsley, but then I went back to sleep. And when I woke up, it was time to come into the studio and do some taping. So I have my carrion curcumin and Veratron Omega. And you know what? I can't get to the beach tomorrow. I'm driving up to see some friends in L.A. tomorrow. And Judy and Len, Toby and Bob. I'm just going to see a bunch of friends. So I got to go up the Implacable Hill in the morning. And normally I don't like that. I like flat on Saturday. But tomorrow the Implacable Hill, probably 8. And I'll be doing that because of Relief Factor. 1-800, the number 4, and the word relief. 1-800-4-RELIEF. Here's what you need to know about it. These 4 natural supplements are the only one I've taken in more than 20 years. They do work to keep you in great shape. I got the lecture again last night. Every wife wants their husband to lift weights. And my buddy John, he and I both do our cardio, but we're not weight people. But Relief Factor will take care of that whenever I become one. Remember, you can also get the starter pack $19.95 for less than $1 a day. $19.95 at relieffactor.com. Relieffactor.com. I hope you're watching us on Amazon Prime or on Pluto TV. We're also now all over the place. But you're listening in your car if you're inside the Beltway driving home and you've been waiting for Big Ben Dominish, host of the Big Ben podcast, and now the editor of the Daily Wire's brand new opinion page, which I think is a fabulous breakthrough for smart people everywhere. Ben, you are cutting into my reading time already. I thought you'd take a couple of weeks to kind of lounge around and pretend to be scouting for talent. You're already pumping stuff out.
Well, I'm doing that too in terms of the scouting and the pumping. I will say, Hugh, that I mean perhaps this is unwise of me, but I did start to do free work prior to coming on, just because the simple fact is things that needed to get commissioned, and so we were very happy with the first week of our tenure and the folks that we've had writing interesting pieces for us, and I hope that you will be one of them too. I already sent you a suggestion. So
well, you've got a Grand Canyon-sized opportunity there, and it can be the replacement for Book World, for the New York Times Magazine. It can be everything that's gone away that used to be good.
Yeah, well, I think that you're recognizing that this is something that has been a real wasteland in the last couple of years. It's gotten worse and worse, and I think that there's still places that can do it well, but we kind of know what they are, and no offense to our friends at the Wall Street Journal, but it's one of these things that I think there's an opportunity here for a variety of opinion, a variety of views, young and older, more experienced and less experienced, and folks fighting it out, duking it out over all sorts of different disagreements that happen within the conservative movement. And I think that that's something that's very healthy and that I want to feature and promote. And I hope folks will come and check us out at the Daily Wire. It's been a pleasure to join their team, and we're going to have more people joining us too.
Now, I believe in the market, so I think you and Barry Weiss are in a fight. I mean, you're in a death match. It's a cage match because she goes and grabs people, and you go and grab people, and it's
fun.
Funny
you should say that, but I can't comment on current.
Oh, okay. Stay tuned, right? Stay tuned. Are you allowed to put a sports writer in there?
So actually, that's interesting because we were having that conversation exactly this week, and that's an area that I want to get into. We actually want to grow into having the kind of opinion page that features not just opinions about politics, but opinions about other things as well. And sports is definitely one where I am interested in having some strong voices that we promote.
Now, I have a specific question followed by a general one. You are a Commanders fan. You are drafting seventh, after the Browns.
I'm a Redskin.
You're a Redskin. Okay. Well, the Browns are still the Browns, and we're still drafting six. Who, if we draft them, will break your heart?
I'm going to be completely honest with you. I'm a Jeremiah Love guy.
I'm not surprised. He could be Ezekiel.
I actually think. Look, here's the deal. People underrate running backs. I think it's turned the corner. They were overrated for a while, then they sort of drifted down, and now I actually think they're underrated. And I think that if you have a game-changing pass-catching running back who is that high up, I think he has the potential to be Marshall Faulk. I think he has the potential to be somebody who is absolutely a game changer for a team that, frankly, it's an underrated aspect of the terrible season that they had last year. But they lost all their pass catching running backs. They didn't have anybody who could really get out of the backfield and catch the ball. And that, I think, in this modern NFL is impossible to have as an offense. You can't just have running backs on the field who are assigned to pass block or run and can't actually break out and get in underneath the linebackers and make up those yards. And that's something that I think Love would change dramatically, and especially considering the different things that the team is probably willing to invest in. They've got I believe the second highest cap availability right now here in Washington. I think that they're going to spend that on some things, including probably wide receiver and maybe on the lines. But I really would like to have Love, and if he goes before, I will be very pissed.
He's not. I mean, I'm looking at the NFL mock draft database, which is my favorite site because they aggregate them all. And they've got Carnell Tate, which I'll be happy with going to the Browns, and they've got Caleb Downs going to the Redskins. And Caleb Downs is a Hall of Famer. I think he's going to go to the Hall of Fame. But if you don't need him, you don't need him. And right behind him is Jeremiah Love going to the Saints because he's that good.
I'll tell you, Carnell Tate's a great player. And
I'm happy with that. Yeah.
And a lot of places, it's a lot of places have him falling to Washington. I don't know, Hugh, what your own preference is, But from my perspective, I think just that in this day and age, we are going back to a tenure, and you saw that in the surprising market for David Montgomery, by the way, that this is a tenure where if you have a running back who can be a game changer, even if they're going to have a short tenure, that creates a window for you. And we all saw what happened for the Eagles when they pulled off that legendary Saquon trade, and that season is really because of the stupidity of the Giants.
Yeah, we've got Judkins, and he's real good. We need receivers and offensive tackles, so we get 2 first-rounders, but we will not be taking Jeremiah Love. Let me then turn, that leads me to the demand signal for mock drafts tells us that the NFL season is year-round, and for the Daily Signal opinion page, it tells me that if there's a Dan Jenkins out there or any Feinstein, anybody like that, for just an occasional great piece on any sport, I would read it.
Well, look, we are going to be adding people. I have a great colleague in Brent Scher, who is formerly of the Free Beacon, who brought me on and convinced me to take on this gig. And one of the first things that we spent a lot of time talking about was his long-suffering Jets fandom. And so, look, if a man can endure that kind of pain over the course of his life, he's absolutely willing to have people who write about it.
Dangerous boss. I've told you, he's the last man to get the Fetching Mrs. Hewitt tipsy. And so I don't trust Brent, but be careful. Now, let's get to serious stuff. Dwayne did this for me today. It's a picture of unconditional surrender John Trump. And this picture came up when we got General Grant at Shiloh, and we put Donald Trump's face on him, at least Dwayne did. What did the president mean by unconditional surrender, Ben?
I think the president is making clear that he did not enter this with any intention of having leftover problems for future presidents and for the country. I think that Donald Trump views this second term as being one where he is settling all family business. And that means he is going after all the people who he wants to take off the board, and doing so with a precipitous nature, but one that I think Republicans have been surprised by, but also one that is intended to achieve a new reality, a new world that is dominated by America and that has America's interests in the decisions that he has made. I don't think he wants anything left over. I don't think he wants to be asked 5-6 years from now, if he's still, God be with, God bless him if he's still around. If he is asked the kind of question, why did you leave a rump version of this Iran regime in place to once again threaten, your friends, our allies in the Middle East, the people who we care about? I don't think he wants to have that question. I think he wants to take them off the board permanently. And that's why I think he's saying this unconditional surrender thing. He wants a situation that does redound to America's interests more than any kind of, pie in the sky hope about a truly, free Iran. But I also think that he is not willing to accept what some people have proposed, which is kind of a half measure in terms of the way things look. They're thinking about domestic politics. They're worried this is going to last too long. I don't think that's something that he's worried about.
I agree. I think he's looking for Goldilocks. 1991, too little. 2003, too big. What's in the middle of that? Winning.
That's right.
Winning is in the middle of that, and then leaving. And winning and leaving is not impossible here. After the break, I'm going to talk to you about the Democratic Party and their meltdown. During the break, I'm going to talk to you about Wayne Mullin. Leading into the break, we got a minute. Are you worried about sleeper cells? Because I am.
I'm less worried about sleeper cells than some people, but that doesn't mean that I'm not worried. It's a real thing. It's not a fantasy, and you shouldn't listen to anybody who says that they are. This is a very real possibility. I will say though that look, America's military has been planning for this for a very long time. We had a great piece this week at the Daily Wire that I recommend to everyone about the Van Riper Millennium Challenge game and what he did and why that helped inform a lot of people about what could go wrong with going after Iran.
Right.
I think that same type of approach has been used to some degree domestically to pay attention to some of the risk points, et cetera. But I hope that under this administration, that everybody's hands are really on the wheel. And the truth is that after a week in which we've seen the departure of Kristi Noem, and after a week in which we've had concerns raised about what's going on at DOJ and the FBI, that's something that I think Americans need to have more confidence.
The Big Ben podcast this week is fabulous. Ben Shapiro, his new colleague, is there. Ben Talablu, who was with me yesterday, is on for an extended conversation about the Kurds again. It's very important. But now let's talk about this ruthlessness. I think President Trump is a ruthless, tough patriot. In other words, not an autocrat. If the Supreme Court says no tariffs, he goes along with it. That's not autocratic behavior. I wish the Democrats would notice that when he loses, and he grumbles, but he loses. But he's now going to be ruthless because he cannot afford incompetence, Ben. And you just can't if you're running a war.
No, you can't. And I think that he understands that. And I believe that he's been, look, he perceives things from the outside of politics and, as was informed by a lot of, the things that he watched and learned and read. And I think that one of his takeaways was that time and again, the American warfighter had their hands tied. It's one of the reasons he made some choices that Washington doesn't like when it comes to the leadership that he chose. But also I think it's because he wants to really unleash what America can do. A lot of these plans, just because they, were put into action or were put into the process by CENTCOM, didn't necessarily have the possibility of going into action under a different president. Meaning that you would go for the more conventional or the more restrained plan. I think that he's shown that's not what he does. There's a very, I was not quite frankly able to run this down. Others have said that they have, whether you want to believe it or not, that the president insisted when it came to that Maduro raid that they get down to the probability of not having a single casualty on that raid. Now, that tells you something about his insistence. It tells you something about how much he pays attention to this. And, other presidents, I think, would have been willing to accept, we're going to do this. It's going to be something that works out for us, but we're going to lose 50 guys. And I think that that's not something that is acceptable to him. He has a ruthless behavior toward the enemy, and then he has a very protective attitude toward the American soldier. That's something that I think is one of the reasons that he is so uniting when it comes to the attitude of his supporters. By the way, Hugh, I think that this is the biggest myth out there that the media has been churning up, suggesting that Tucker and Megyn and all the other people that they actually speak for some significant portion of the president's base. They do not. There is not a lick of evidence in any of these polls. That is not what's going on here. He might be losing people who are part of his coalition, but the people he's losing are over economic concerns, price of gas, et cetera, Hispanic voters who feel like he's been a little too aggressive when it comes to the immigration side of things. That's all explainable. There is absolutely no evidence that these people who have been fomenting this idea that he's going to war on behalf of Israel as opposed to America's interests, they have no basis whatsoever to claim that.
It's wish casting by legacy media. That's it. Wish casting by legacy media. I don't think the late Ayatollah Khamenei was a dummy. And so he came up with this Yosemite Sam strategy where you go into the saloon and you just start shooting everywhere.
That is a great description. I wish I had come up with. I envy that.
Well, take it, run with it, because I don't own Yosemite Sam. What were they thinking? What was the thinking behind that?
Oman,
yeah,
what the heck?
Azerbaijan.
We were, it's like it's just catching strays out here. It's just like, look. Shapiro has a theory about this, which he says on my podcast, which is that they wanted to just bring other people into the war and then have them essentially get in the president's ear and say, hey, you got to slow things down or you can't do everything the Israelis want you to do. If that was their strategy, it was a bad strategy, and it didn't work. It's also one that, frankly, has set up a situation where, we already talked about a weakened Iran, their inability to project power after everything that Israel has been able to do to their proxies across the region and everything that has happened to them economically and internally that has completely undermined their authority and ability to control their own populace, which, of course, led to those tens of thousands of people in the streets who, sadly, many of them slaughtered by the regime. This is an incredibly weak moment. And so my attitude is when I see these Democrats who are going out there and saying, this is There's no imminent threat. There's no, something that's going to, have. There's no better time to kick a man than when he's down, Hugh, especially when
explain
to
to me
Ayatollah.
Gavin Newsom. On the Warner Brothers theme, he's Sylvester the Cat. He doesn't have any idea what he's doing. He went on the Pod Bros, which has become like anti-Semite Central. They should just merge with our right-wing friends.
Seriously, they should name themselves Pod Save Iran.
Pod Save Iran. Okay, I'll take that one. You can have Yosemite Sam. That's pretty good.
but seriously, the fact that they are at this point, like, but for Ben Rhodes,
Pod Save Iran. Did you use that yet? I may delete this and just steal that and pretend it's mine. Pod Save Iran. Gosh, that's perfect.
But the point is just these guys, they are so invested in an ahistorical revisionist view of the Iran deal that it was some kind of dramatic, amazing, peace-loving and achieving, diplomatic deal. They are so invested in that narrative that they can't even see anything that's going on in front of them. It is astounding to me that these people got to the heights of power. They really were right there next to the President of the United States telling him what words to say. And by the way, Obama has not been any better on this.
He's quiet.
It's like, if anything, I think the fact that Donald Trump is cleaning up his mess in so many ways, I'm sure it's frustrating for him. I can't even imagine what he's going through, especially considering,
I can't answer this and you can't answer this, but the Pod Bros plus Ben Rhodes plus President Obama, yesterday, Haviv Reddy-Gur, who's really, I think, Israel's emerging public intellectual. We've had Dr. Orrin for years. Yes. And he had on Micah Goodman, who I do not know, Maimonides scholar. And they used some names like Kamel from Turkey, and then they brought up Katoub and Bana, guys that you would know if you read The Looming Tower. Do you think anyone on the Pod Bros or President Obama have any idea who these people are and how they shape the Middle East in the image of their resistance Islamist philosophy? Because it's idiotic to think other.
I think that this is I think that this is, upon reflection, a series of Democrat elites who were credentialed and were so incurious about history that they thought everything was new. They thought everything was bold. They thought everything was some kind of massive achievement that was going to stand the test of time. And the truth is that if you know anything about history, you would be skeptical about that. Even if you thought it was the right decision, you would be saying, well, what if it's wrong? What if we do go in a different way? And one of the things that I think is so important when it comes to evaluating these things is to say, okay, well, let's steel man the other side of the issue. They have never done that. They have only ever plowed through straw man their entire careers. And that's why I think we ended up with the kind of foreign policy that we had under Barack Obama, with people who had incredibly impressive resumes in terms of their educational experience, but non-impressive resumes when it came to actually doing anything, living anything, enacting any policy.
They knew how to seduce legacy journalists. That's what they knew, the echo chamber.
Yes.
So which Democrat nominee for 2028 has been most helped by the last week, assuming that the trajectory of American success continues?
I think that given the way that things are going, I actually think that this benefits, of all people, AOC. I think that she has actually helped the most by this. And the reason is that because she has flubbed so much on the international stage, she is going to focus, I think, entirely on domestic issues, entirely on affordability, on all the things that are close to home, et cetera. She's not going to try to win people over again the way that she did when she went to Munich, et cetera. I think that she's just going to say, I'm just about what's going on in America. Donald Trump has failed to meet the mission that he had when it came to helping working people, et cetera, et cetera. And I think that that's something that's going to actually work within their party coalition, because they're going to want to put their blinkers on. They don't want to actually admit anything about what happened overseas.
How about my approach? Rahm Emanuel steps out and says, hey, I was there in the first term. Obamacare hasn't worked because Teddy Kennedy died. We can fix that. I went to
the heel turn.
Yeah, the heel turn, and then
I'm in for this. I'm absolutely in for this.
And I went to Japan, and I know what China is, and these people over here have never been out of the country, and they will not be near my White House. I'm going to go get the old JFK Democrats and bring them in. And by the way, I drop a lot of F-bombs, and I'm sorry, Mom, but that's who I am.
Well, and unlike Gavin Newsom, they're authentic.
It's legit.
Reprogrammed. That's
who it is. It really is who he is.
Look, I will tell you this, Hugh, and this is absolutely God's honest truth. Back when I was, in this policy space instead of in the media space, my friends and I admired Rahm so much in terms of his approach to the Obama White House, and we always said, if Rahm had won out over Valerie Jarrett, this White House would have gone very different.
Amen.
And that is, I believe, still true to this day. You would have been a better and more effective president. We would have hated him more because of that effectiveness as conservatives. But it's the truth.
And his brother can raise the money, and he knows how to debate. And he's been on this show, and Gavin Newsom, who said 1,000 times he'd come on this show, and he won't show up because he won't he's gone the other way now. Now he's hired Izzy.
Has people been pointing this out? You need to marshal a group of people to start teasing Gavin Newsom on the internet, because I have learned from Ted Cruz that works.
Oh, I've always thought it didn't work, but now I'm so frustrated because he said yes, 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 and then Izzy took over and he said yes, 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 and then he doesn't reply anymore. Because he's
I've been on TV with him multiple times. I've been in green rooms with him multiple times. I'm sure that there has got to be a way to get under his skin to the point that he comes on.
Well, he's the first California governor since Gray Davis.
Right off the bat, you're going to ask him if he read The Looming Tower, and then he's going to say that you hate people who are dyslexic.
You're right. All he has to do is know the name Katub. He can fake it. Hey, Ben Domenech, thank you for joining me, and congratulations on the Daily Signal. That is terrific. The Daily Wire, not the Daily Signal, the Daily Wire. And on the Big Ben pod this week, listen to it because Ben and Ben Teleblue is on that too. Up early in California today to greet it wasn't even dawn. It was the middle of the night. Fox and Friends, 6:20 Eastern, 3:20 West Coast time. Here I am talking with our friends about what the Wayne Mullin switch out means, cut number 10.
Well, Cuba's doing very badly. They're failing. Cuba right now is, to put it mildly, a failing nation. And I've been hearing about Cuba.
We got the wrong cut, number 10. That's a good cut, number 10, but that's yesterday's cut, number 10. So when we switch out the cuts number 10, they purposely, Dwayne did that on purpose to get rid of me because I looked really good this morning, even though I sounded like 3 cups of coffee in, my voice was scratchy. Let me, in the meantime, play for you Brad Cooper at CENTCOM today, cut number 7. Oh, everything's gone haywire?
Then if I just look back over the last 24 hours of the operation compared to where we were at start, ballistic missile attacks have decreased by 90% since day one. Drone attacks have decreased by 83% since day one. Having said this, we remain vigilant. Our strikes against the Iranian Navy have intensified. You may have heard the president say just a little while ago that we have sunk or destroyed 24 ships. That was true at the moment. We're now up over 30 ships. And in just the last few hours, we hit an Iranian drone carrier ship, roughly the size of a World War II aircraft carrier. And as we speak, it's on
fire and sinking. Cut number 8.
We are now starting our 6th day of a historic mission to eliminate Iran's ability to threaten Americans. We are, if I could channel my inner Navy officer, we are at full speed ahead in executing orders given by leadership in Washington. The President and Secretary Hegseth have been crystal clear in their expectations, and we are at a high level of execution. As described by the Secretary and earlier this week by me, U.S. combat power is building as Iranian combat power declines. Our air dominance allows us to hit Iran's center of gravity with overwhelming power and reach. A couple of examples. In just the last 72 hours, America's bomber force has struck nearly 200 targets deep inside of Iran, including around Tehran. And in just the last hour, U.S. B-2 bombers dropped dozens of 2,000-pound penetrator bombs targeting deeply buried ballistic missile launchers. Notably, we have also struck Iran's equivalent of Space Command, which degrades their ability to threaten America.
And then one more cut number 9.
Lucas, indispensable. As many of you know, and if you don't know, this was an original Iranian drone design. We captured it, pulled the guts out, sent it back to America, put a little Made America on it, brought it back here, and we're shooting it at the Iranians.
Very inexpensive, and it's very effective. Carolyn Levitt today from the White House podium on what President Trump meant by unconditional surrender, cut number 11.
President Trump means when he says unconditional surrender is when he, as commander-in-chief of the United States military and the leader of the free world, determines that Iran can no longer pose a threat to the United States of America and to our troops and our personnel in the Middle East. That is, again, the ultimate goal of Operation Epic Fury, to annihilate their Navy, to take out their ballistic missile threat, which we have largely done in the course of just 6 days, and then, of course, to ensure they can never obtain a nuclear weapon, to significantly weaken their proxies in the region that have killed and maimed hundreds of Americans throughout the years. We've seen the Houthis and Hezbollah have hardly put up a fight over the past 6 days, so we're already well on our way to achieving the objectives of Operation Epic Fury, and when the president determines that Iran no longer poses that threat, that's when that unconditional surrender will take place. As for the next leader of Iran...
Here's the president's post earlier, posted again by Pete Hegseth. We just concluded a very good meeting with the largest U.S. defense manufacturing companies where we discussed production and production schedules. They have agreed to quadruple production of the exquisite class weaponry that we want to reach as rapidly as possible at the highest levels of quantity. Expansion began 3 months prior to the meeting, and plants in production of many of these weapons are already underway. We have a virtually unlimited supply of medium and upper medium grade munitions. That's great news. I'm in the Relief Factor studio. I remind you, I went up the Implacable Hill yesterday. I'm going up it again tomorrow. I did not do it today because I went on Fox and Friends, which I'll play for you after the break. And I'm fine because you can take a few days off for a variety of reasons. And if you're taking your Relief Factor every day, 1-800, the number 4, and the word relief. That 3-week starter pack is $19.95. And you've been taking it like I have for 13 years. You can put the miles in. You can take a few days off and put the miles back in and do the Implacable Hill or go flat. Whatever it is that you do, whether you're a weightlifter, a skull person, whether you're a swimmer, whether you're a jump roper. I don't know about jump roping. Actually, I've never jumped rope in my life. But no matter what your minor aches and pains come from, Relief Factor is for you. Call them, 1-800, the number 4, and the word relief, or go to relieffactor.com, relieffactor.com. That 3-week starter pack, $19.95, less than $1 a day, is also at relieffactor.com. So I told you last segment, I was up early for Fox and Friends, 3:20 California time. Ainsley was asking the questions. Here's that cut number 10.
So let's bring in Fox News contributor, former assistant White House counsel, and former special assistant to the Attorney General, Hugh Hewitt. Good morning to you, Hugh.
Hi, Ainsley. Good morning.
Good morning. What do you know about Senator Wayne Mullin? Is he the right guy for this job?
Well, on a personal level, he's a fabulous person to talk to and have on the radio to talk about national security, to talk about homeland security. He's a very experienced, very well-liked member of the Senate. On a national level, President Trump took us into combat 7 days ago. That's the toughest job of the commander-in-chief. You want him to be absolutely ruthless in winning the war, prosecuting the war. President Trump is doing that. But he also has to be absolutely ruthless with regards to his team at home. So he looks over at the Department of Homeland Security. They've got 260,000 people. Along with the FBI, they've got to keep the homeland safe. Not just TSA at the airport, but counterterrorism, cybersecurity, all this stuff, the Coast Guard, it's all part of DHS. He needs to put someone there who's absolutely able to motivate and lead 250,000 people to keep the homeland safe. Now, we know, and we've known for years, there are Hezbollah terrorists operating in the United States. They're an arm of Iran. So we are vulnerable at home. We need someone like Wayne Mullin in that job, leading with complete confidence in the confidence of the president. So my hat is off for the president for taking a tough choice. I know he likes Kristi Noem, but if she's not leading the department, Wayne Mullin can. I think he'll get a lot of votes. He's very well liked. And there are serious Democrats, not just John Fetterman, but Jack Reed of Rhode Island, Chris Coons of Delaware, and, of course, Angus King, independent caucus with the Democrat out of Maine. These are serious people. They'll vote for him, and they should do it quickly because DHS needs leadership quickly.
Yeah, you're right. Especially we're worried about those sleeper cells now that Iran's being hit. We're worried about our homeland. Senator Blumenthal says this person will have to be totally and radically different in their approach to running the agency. And then Chuck Schumer said something similar, whether Mullin commits to change in the agency. So they will have to go in front of the Senate, and they'll have to get the majority of the votes. And many people agree with you and think that he'll get through with flying colors. Here is a clip. We want to know where he stands now on these issues. So here's a clip of Wayne Mullin when he was on Fox Business Watch.
The Democrats always want to scream that, we're anti-immigrant. We're not anti-immigrant. In fact, we want immigrants to come over here in a lawful way. Most of these immigrants that do come to the United States, they're leaving a third world country that doesn't enforce the rule of law. What separates us from a third world country is the fact that we do have laws and we are a nation of laws. When you become a lawless nation, you lose your country. And so these Democrats that are screaming that, that they want to defund the police or that they want to have zero bail set for these criminals and release them back on the streets, that they want to close our jails, that you start going, are you really anti-police or anti-America?
So, Hugh, what's your reaction?
Senator Mullin is direct. He's a great communicator. Now, Senator Rand Paul is chairman of Homeland Security, so it's up for the senator to get it scheduled and get it moving. But it could be done this week. And Senator Thune came out and said, we're going to move it fast. There is no reason that the Senate cannot get a member of their body through their body as quickly as possible. He absolutely can do this job. And he's fabulous at delivering a message of law and order and of on your toes, everyone. Look out for the sleeper cells. Let's be aware that we had an open border for 4 years. Hezbollah is not stupid. Iran is not stupid. We've got bad people in the country. Let's find them. Let's make sure we're helping the FBI keep them away from our people.
Yes, great points. Yes, and confirmation quickly, please. Thank you so much, Hugh.
Do you know what I didn't get a chance to say? Did you know that the fence isn't done, the wall's not done? I looked this up last night. They let the contractor finish the wall in February. A month ago, the contract to finish the wall was let. The president has been in office for 13 months, and the finish the wall contract was let yesterday, or last month. Do you know that if Democrats win the House and the Senate, they can screw this up? Do you know that? And they let it yesterday. What have they been doing for a year? That's what he ran on. Now, I've been talking about it for 20 years. So I'm just shocked it's not done. I thought, okay, maybe it should be 700 to 800 miles. There's a bunch of the 2,000-mile border you can't cross. But it's 700 to 800 miles. And you need a road behind it so that the Border Patrol can drive up and down real fast. And I just wonder, what were they thinking? Why isn't it done? Who was in charge? Wayne Mullin, go to work on that. All right, Pete Hegseth, CENTCOM presser yesterday, cut number 2.
Stockpiles of defensive and offensive weapons allow us to sustain this campaign as long as we need to. Again, our munition status only increases as our advantage increases. Our capabilities, we have only just begun to fight and fight decisively. Having a chance to hear from Admiral Cooper. If you think you've seen something, just wait. The amount of combat power that's still flowing, that's still coming, that we'll be able to project over Iran is a multiples of what it currently is right now when you add up our capabilities and those of the Israeli Defense Forces.
Hey, one more cut. I don't know. I'm a civilian. I do know, though, if you have air superiority so that you can loiter, you send up a cheap drone that just watches, and then when you see anything moving that looks remotely like it needs a B-52 over it, that's when you bring in the B-52, and they can't do anything about it. They're doomed. Here's Pete Hegseth, cut number 4.
We will avenge them, no doubt. But I liken Iran's predicament to a football team who scripted the first 20 plays of a game. The team knew what plays to run because their first few drives were scripted. But now that the game has started, and the blitz is on, they don't know what plays to call, let alone how to get in the huddle and call those plays. Iran's senior leaders are dead. The so-called governing council that might have selected a successor, dead, missing, or cowering in bunkers, too terrified to even occupy the same room. Senior generals, mid-level officers, enlisted ranks, they can't talk or communicate, let alone mount a coordinated and sustained offensive. That's not great for morale. The Iranian Air Force is no more, built for 1996, destroyed in 2026. The Iranian Navy rests at the bottom of the Persian Gulf. Combat ineffective, decimated, destroyed, defeated, pick your adjective.
So, I wonder how they're doing. Not well. Joined now by the poet laureate of the Hugh Hewitt Show, Tarzana Joe. Hello, Joe.
Hello, you. Serious poems for serious weeks. But what I know of warfare, you could fit in a short poem. And that's what I have, a short poem. I've never been a soldier, but everyone I know tells me of the weight they carry every place they go. It never can be jettisoned, never set aside, because the burden that they bear is everywhere inside. The wounding is invisible, the unseen scars go deep. They wait around a corner. They wake them from their sleep. Sent to serve their country in a cold and distant land, changed by what they see in ways we cannot understand. So every time a war begins, I pray it will be brief, a minimum of sorrow, a minimum of grief, that soldiers will be shielded from every threat they face, and airmen do their mission and then return to base. Objectives are accomplished, all deployments short. Every ship that sets to sea will soon come back to port. But I also pray for veterans who wake up in the night, for every battle fought today is one that they still fight. That's Daylight Praying Time by Tarzana Joe.
Well and truly written, Joe. When did you pen that? Just this week as the war broke out?
Yes. And after some discussions with my good friend Mike, Army Ranger, Vietnam vet, and good guy.
I think he will appreciate that. I think every veteran and family of the veterans will appreciate that. And it will be at tarzanajoe.com, which I hope is working.
Yes. I may not be working, but it's working.
Well, no, we're subject to cyber attacks. I would take down Tarzana Joe right away if I were the Iranians, so I would be very careful this week. tarzanajoe.com has a get a poem button as well. Are you busy?
Moderately, but that's good. So when I'm not busy, I can work on my golf game or my Friday poems and make them.
Your wedding season is about to begin, isn't it, Joe?
Yes.
And
the
wedding
poems are wedding poems.
Okay, they were. I was just wondering, when do the wedding poems start to roll in?
Well, there are June weddings, and the more frightened the father, the earlier the request comes. So I figure you're getting them at the end of March.
Head over to tarzanajoe.com and ask for a poem. It says, I need a poem, or send him a note at tarzanajoe at, what's your email now, Joe?
Hotmail.
Hotmail.com. tarzanajoe at hotmail.com. Thank you, Joe. I would like everyone to remember it is Lent. I have got the Food for the Poor campaign underway. 855-359-4673. 855-359-4673. 855-359-4673. Every $50 serves a family, but 50, 500, 5,000. The banner at the top of HughHewitt.com, completely secure, completely safe. Any donation you want to give, thank you. Do your almsgiving there this Friday if you can't make Stations of the Cross at HughHewitt.com.